Before I started this experiment, I was convinced I already knew exactly how it would end. I was wrong.
When it comes to growing aquarium plants, everyone seems to have a different opinion. Some say CO2 is absolutely essential. Others grow beautiful planted tanks without it. If you're just starting out, that's incredibly confusing. I've always been on the side that says use CO2. So I decided to test my own advice. I built 2 identical aquariums. The only difference, one received CO2, the other didn't. But before we look at the results, let me show you exactly how I set up this experiment. I first started by placing the UNS Strata hardscape in the aquariums. I just wanted to test the fit and see what it looks like. By the way, Strata is made from resin and it does not impact the water parameters. That was important to me to make the both setups as equal as possible. Then I used a divider between the aquariums to prevent light spilling from one aquarium into the other, making sure they're both lit equally. Next, I started filling up the filter chambers inside the UNS all-in-one aquarium. It comes with a pump and has a flexible outflow nozzle that will allow you to control the outflow of your filter. I inserted the sponge that comes within the kit and added a little piece of extra filter floss on top. For the biological filtration, I used Oase Biocliff, which is simply pumice. And I put it inside a mesh bag, since this material has the tendency to float in the beginning until it is fully saturated. Next, I measured 2 liters of soil, and I did this to make sure both aquariums receive the exact same amount of substrate. I added this 2 liters of soil as a base layer and placed the Strata hardscape on top. This way, I could distribute it evenly and also make sure as much of the hardscape details remain visible once the aquarium is planted. Then I measured another 1 liter of soil and filled it in the rear corner. This will help to elevate the plants in this corner and make for a dynamic triangular composition. Then I brushed the soil in place using my favorite painting brush. Finally, I measured 0.5 liters powder type soil and used it as a top layer for carpeting plants. Before I proceeded, I made sure the substrate is perfectly leveled. I used for this a sand flattener from my good friend Pachi from Austria. You can find a link for this down in the description below. I selected easy, medium and advanced category carpeting plants for this experiment. I compared the portions and selected the best two of the trio. To make sure both aquariums get identical amount of plants, I split each cup in half. This way each tank is receiving half the portion from each cup. The only way to make it more equal would be to count the individual stems. Comment below if you want to see me doing this on camera. I began with planting the foreground with the Micranthemum callitrichoides Cuba, formerly known as HC. Next, I planted Eleocharis mini. I tried to plant Eleocharis mini everywhere straight behind the Hemianthus Cuba, as well as on the right-hand side, filling in the slope towards the background plants. Finally, I planted Marsilea hirsuta. Again, this plant went behind the Eleocharis mini, but also underneath the rocks where the strata hardscape offers a little cave where it would receive the least amount of light. Before moving on, I sprayed all the plants wet to prevent them from drying out. Now comes the background plants, easy, medium and advanced category, just to make sure we have all the categories covered to see how the different category plants are going to perform under the different conditions. I began with planting the Hottonia palustris, which is a easy category stem plant, in the right rear corner. Next, I moved on to planting the Micranthemum glomeratum in the left rear corner. This is a advanced category stem plant. Finally, I planted Rotala blood red in the middle behind the strata hardscape. Once completed, I once again sprayed all the plants wet before moving to the second aquarium and repeated the process.
Okay guys, both cubes are planted and it's a weird feeling, I will admit, because until now, every aquarium I ever tried, I did my best. CO2, additives, like everything. This time around, one has a handicap, it's this guy, and this one has everything. So I don't know what's gonna happen, a little bit nervous, like shaking on the inside, but really excited. So now let's fill in the water and see how it goes.
I use a piece of paper towels to prevent water from disturbing the soil when filling in the water. Once the water was inside, I switched on the CO2 in one of the aquariums. Before calling it a wrap, I added Arcan Night Out, which is my #1 product of choice for bacteria to get your aquarium started. In addition, I added Arca Special Blend. Sniff at your own risk.
It is first day, 24 hours approximately since I have set up both aquariums, and they're looking pretty much identical. Let me show you. So the plants have straightened up, as you can see in the background. Here the Hemianthus glomeratum, and the rotala in the back. You can see this one is with CO2. Here is Hottonia palustris, pointing vertical. As you can see, the water is a little bit cloudy, so I'm going to perform the first at least 50% water change. Also, the soil at the beginning takes up a lot of minerals. To compensate for that, I'm gonna do the first water change.
I performed a 50% water change on day 1. I cleaned the glass, and afterwards I dosed again Arcanite out. This product is to be dosed every day for the first week.
It is day 3 of the experiment, and so far things are going well. Let's get to my daily routine. So I'm checking on the tanks, and as you can see here on the right hand side we have the CO2 going in. It kicks in 1 hour before the light goes on. Both tanks are clear, no signs of algae, but also close to no signs of growth. And the daily routine looks like this: 5 milliliters of Arcanite out to get the biology kick-started, and 1 spritzer of 1 pump of the 2-hour Aquarist APT0. Let's go. Cheers. Here on the site I can see the first roots of the Eleocharis mini forming, and in the late evenings I've seen a lot of bubbles here on the Cuba in the CO2 tank, versus the one non-CO2 I haven't seen any bubbles forming on the plants.
I finished off day 3 with cleaning the glass and doing a large 80% water change. This helped me to get rid of the cloudiness that was there for the first few days. I guess it came from the not pre-washed pumice and also from all the tissue culture material that was still attached to the plants as I skipped rinsing them.
Okay guys, it is officially half-time of the project. 2 weeks or a little bit over 2 weeks, 14 days have passed, and you can clearly see the tank with CO2 is accelerating and it's starting to grow at a much faster pace. Hemianthus Cuba already, kind of filling in the gaps. The carpet looks almost complete from the top down. You have a very strong Marsilea, hirsuta shoots here in the bottom corner, and also the stem plants in the back just pushing higher, much bushier, and yeah, everything is covered with bubbles. On the other hand, I'm quite impressed also with the growth in the non-CO2 tank. I honestly haven't expected it to be this good. So even the Cuba is starting to form a carpet. The plants in the back are growing slow but steadily, and it's really not too bad. But I have a feeling that since, like a few days, the tank where I'm actively injecting CO2 has started to accelerate. So I think over the next few weeks, we're really gonna see the difference, because now the plants have established, they have converted from their tissue culture baby state, they have formed some roots, and now they're able to make use of all the nutrients available in the water and really speed up the growth. So I guess this one is gonna start to grow exponentially faster. "30 days ago, I honestly thought this experiment was going to be pretty boring. In my head, the outcome was already decided. I expected the CO2 aquarium to completely take off. A lush carpet, fast growth, healthy plants, and I thought the aquarium without the CO2 would struggle. I expected the more demanding plants to slowly decline and sooner or later algae to become a problem. In fact, that's what I've been telling people for years. Even halfway through the experiment, I was convinced that the CO2 tank was about to pull even further ahead, and that's exactly what I thought would happen. But then came day 30.
Now don't get me wrong, the aquarium with CO2 is clearly the winner. The carpet filled in faster, the stem plants became denser, and overall the growth was exactly what I would expect from a high-tech planted aquarium. But what surprised me wasn't the CO2 aquarium won. What surprised me was just how well the aquarium without CO2 performed. There was no algae. The carpet developed far better than I ever expected, and even some of the more demanding plants established themselves surprisingly well. The difference between the two aquariums was nowhere near as dramatic as I imagined 30 days ago.
Will this experiment change the way I build my own aquariums? Not really. I will continue using CO2 because for me the extra growth is absolutely worth it. But it completely changed the way I think about why some planted aquariums succeed while others struggle.
What it did change was the way I think about what really makes a planted aquarium successful. One variable stands out more than all the others. I've been using reverse osmosis water in both aquariums, and I have a feeling that might be the missing piece of the puzzle. So that's exactly what I'm going to test in the next 30-day experiment.